Most people believe they came to this life to pay off karma, but the soul came to play. We live this human experience as if we were trapped in an endless test, waiting for punishment or reward based on what we do. But that vision isn't spiritual, it's mental. Because true spirituality isn't about carrying guilt or enduring divine tests. It's about remembering who you are in the midst of chaos and using your creative power to move the pieces of this reality. This audiobook is for those who sense there's something more, for those who feel they're in the middle of a game but aren't clear on the rules. Here I won't talk to you about religions. I'll talk to you about energy, consciousness, and internal power. Because life isn't something that happens to you, it's something you're playing, sometimes unconsciously, from old wounds, family patterns, or inherited beliefs. But once you awaken, you no longer play the same way. You no longer repeat, you decide. Here we're going to talk about those invisible rules that govern everything. The vibration that attracts, the intention that creates, the lessons that repeat until you understand them. You're going to discover that your body isn't just matter. It's your energetic avatar, that your bonds aren't coincidental. They're mirrors of what you vibrate, and that crises aren't failures. They're disguised missions. Throughout this journey, each chapter will be like a new piece on the board. Some will make you uncomfortable, others will free you. But all are designed to remind you that you didn't come to survive this game. You came to enjoy it, to expand, to embody your soul, and to manifest from your deepest truth. And now, get ready because the game begins. Chapter 1. The Board. It's not what you see. Awaken from the unconscious game. The world isn't how it is. It's how you perceive it. From the moment we're born, we enter a game, but nobody gives us the manual. They teach us to compete, to please, to achieve. They tell us what success is, what failure is, what's correct and what's not. But all of that isn't the real board. It's a mental board constructed by systems, cultures, families, and wounds. We play from the character assigned to us without questioning whether that piece truly represents us. The unconscious game begins when you forget that you are the player and you believe you are the piece. You live as the responsible one, the savior, the successful one, the one who pleases, the one who always fights. And the more you identify with that role, the harder it becomes to change the game, because your identity becomes an invisible prison that repeats moves, even though you no longer want that result. The first spiritual step isn't to meditate, it's to awaken. Awaken from automatism, from decisions made from fear, from bonds sustained by attachment, from paths you follow only because that's what's expected of you. To awaken is to realize that you aren't your thoughts, you aren't your achievements, you aren't your mistakes, you are the player behind the character, and from there you can truly begin to move the pieces. Carl Jung explained it without mincing words. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it destiny. That's what the unconscious game does. It makes you think you have no power, that everything is outside, that the rules can't be changed. But when you make the pattern conscious, you're no longer trapped, you're choosing. Let's take this to practice. Close your eyes for a moment. Think of some current situation in your life that you don't like. Then, ask yourself with total honesty, from what character am I playing this scene? The one who always sacrifices, the one who always has to prove themselves, the one who's afraid of being alone. Once you detect it, breathe deeply and say mentally, I recognize the character, but I no longer need it to play for me. Do it with compassion, and you'll see how the board begins to move. Intro. The next chapter, we're going to look at something that until now has seemed very normal to you, but that in reality is your most powerful energetic technology, your body. Because only when you understand it as a frequency field can you begin to play with consciousness. Chapter 2. The Invisible Rules. Energetic Laws of the Game. Life isn't won with brute force, it's won by understanding the system. Like every game, existence has rules, but they aren't written in any visible contract. They operate on more subtle planes. Whoever ignores them feels that life is unfair, chaotic, or random. Whoever understands them stops fighting against the board and begins to move with spiritual intelligence. It's not about luck, it's about alignment with the invisible rules. These rules don't reward those who run fastest. They reward those who play from internal coherence. When your thought goes in one direction, your emotion in another, and your action in a third, the game becomes confusing. But when mind, emotion, and conduct enter into harmony, reality responds with fluidity, not because the universe favors you, but because you stopped sabotaging the flow of the game. The ancient traditions already knew this. Hermeticism explained these rules as universal principles that govern all human experience. The Kabbalion wasn't written as philosophy. It was designed as a hidden manual of the spiritual game. That's why whoever wants to understand these laws in depth will find an audiobook on this channel dedicated exclusively to that system. Here, however, we're not going to study them. We're going to use them as practical rules to move within the game of life. One of the most important rules is this: reality doesn't respond to force, it responds to coherence. People who pressure, insist, and wear themselves out usually get stuck. Others, with less visible effort, advance with precision. The difference isn't in the action, it's in the internal state from which that action is born. The game doesn't punish, it only reflects the player's level of internal order. Observe this in daily life. Someone who makes decisions from anxiety usually attracts more obstacles, not because they think badly, but because their internal field is fragmented. On the other hand, whoever acts from clarity and calm creates clean movements, unexpected opportunities, and synchronicities that seem like luck. It's not magic, it's understanding the invisible rules. To move better in this game, start by reviewing your way of playing. Are you reacting or responding? Are you forcing results or reading the moment? Every day the game gives you signals. Resistance indicates misalignment. Fluidity indicates coherence. Adjusting your way of playing is more powerful than trying to win by force. And now that you know that life operates under invisible rules and not under chaos, the next chapter reveals something even more important. You're going to discover who the player really is within the game, how your energetic avatar works, and why your body, your mind, and your emotions aren't obstacles, but tools of the soul to advance in this spiritual game. Chapter 3. Your energetic avatar. How does your internal playing field work? You aren't inside your body. Your body is inside you. Although it seems like a paradox, that's what the most ancient traditions and the most current energetic research teach. The physical body, your thinking mind, and your emotional world aren't the totality of who you are. They're only the visible interface of a deeper field, your auric field or energetic avatar. And it's that field that truly participates in the spiritual game. Barbara Brennan, former NASA scientist and author of the classic Hands of Light, demonstrated that the human being is a complex energetic system composed of layers that go beyond the physical. She describes how unresolved emotional blockages, traumas, and dense thoughts get trapped in these subtle layers and from there distort our vital experience, as if you were playing with broken armor. If your energetic field is fragmented, your internal game becomes confusing and exhausting. Everything you experience originates in this field. The opportunities that appear, the conflicts that repeat, the physical symptoms, or the seemingly causeless moods. Everything is rooted in how you're transmitting from your internal avatar. Energy doesn't lie. If your field is dirty, no matter how much you smile, the results reveal it. It's not about appearing well, but about being in energetic integrity. Here enters the importance of energetic management. You brush your teeth every day, but when do you clean your field? There are people who carry others' emotions for weeks, obsessive thoughts for years, or old pains that were never released. And without knowing it, that lowers their level of play, not as punishment, but from accumulated density. That's why, at this point in the spiritual path, it's key to assume responsibility for your energetic avatar. Start by observing your body. What parts do you feel contracted or tense without apparent reason? Feel your breathing. Does it flow or does it block in your chest? And recognize if you're absorbing energies that don't belong to you. Sometimes it's enough to close your eyes, breathe deeply, and say silently, "I return what isn't mine. I recover what belongs to me." That single phrase can free more than 1,000 words. And now that you recognize your field as the true player in this game, in the next chapter you'll discover that we don't all play the same game. Some came to sow, others to liberate, others to build. Knowing your spiritual mission is understanding your role in this cosmic board. Chapter 4. Missions of the Soul. How to know what you came to play. In this spiritual game, no one enters without a deep reason. Your soul didn't accidentally fall into this timeline with this family, in this country. You chose this scenario because it contained the exact challenges to activate your mission. And no, not everyone came for the same thing. Some souls are sowers. They bring seeds of consciousness, awaken topics that others don't yet understand, and often experience rejection because they're ahead of the collective. Others are liberators. They incarnate in dense systems to break family chains, collective karmas, or control structures. And others are creators. They channel solutions, ideas, projects, and new ways of life more aligned with the soul. None is more important than another, but each has a different playing field. Dolores Cannon, hypnotic regression therapist, dedicated decades to exploring soul contracts. In her research, she discovered that before being born, many souls choose specific roles to fulfill, make pacts with other consciousnesses, and program key events that will later be the clues to their mission. They're not accidents, they're activators. Dolores called it the prenatal plan, and you have one too. Knowing your mission isn't a mental conclusion, it's an energetic recognition. It's not about discovering what to do, but about remembering who you came to be. The mission is revealed when you stop imitating and start vibrating in authenticity. You feel a clear impulse that doesn't seek approval or logic. You simply can't not do it. If you feel that your life has been marked by ruptures, crises, or abrupt leaps, that doesn't take you away from your mission. It's pushing you toward it. Souls with powerful missions usually experience challenging lives, not as punishment, but as training. The deeper your task, the more prepared your field must be. To integrate this chapter, take a few minutes and observe your life story as if it were a movie. What have been the patterns that repeat? What themes hurt you, and at the same time you're passionate about transforming? What could you dedicate your energy to for years, even if nobody applauds you? There hides a clue, and in the next chapter we'll see what obstacles appear when the ego disguises itself as spirituality, and how to avoid having your mission contaminated with misaligned desires. Because in this game, there are also subtle traps. Chapter 5. Traps of the game: spiritual ego, self-deception, and false light. Not everything that shines is consciousness, and not every spiritual search is born from the soul. In this game, there also exist traps disguised as light. One of the most dangerous is the spiritual ego. That voice that appropriates the language of consciousness but uses it to feed superiority, judgment, or disconnection. The spiritual ego doesn't tell you I'm better than you. It tells you I'm already awake. You're not. It doesn't present itself as ambition, but as enlightenment. But behind many elevated discourses there's a need for recognition, fear of emptiness, or rejection of pain that hasn't yet been integrated. Carl Jung called it the spiritual shadow, that unseen part of the being that camouflages itself within the sacred. According to Jung, what isn't recognized gets projected, and on the spiritual path, what hasn't been healed transforms into dogma. From there emerge phrases like, "Everything happens for a reason," said to avoid feeling, or empty decrees repeated from the anxiety of having control. One of the most common traps is turning spirituality into an escape, fleeing from the body, from emotion, from conflict, from human error, pretending that everything has been transcended. But in reality, the one who talks most about peace is often the one who's repressing the most internal war. And how do you recognize if you've fallen into this trap? Observe if you use your spiritual path to disconnect from reality, to not look at your shadow, to avoid difficult conversations, to feel superior or more evolved, or even to validate decisions that deep down don't do you good. You're not wrong if this resonates with you. We've all been there. What's important is to remember it. A true path of consciousness doesn't disconnect you from the human, it immerses you more deeply in it, but from another frequency. It's not evasion, it's expanded presence. To avoid these traps, practice silent self-examination. You don't need to confess it to anyone. Just ask yourself at key moments, would I do this thing I'm doing if nobody knew? Does my search come from the heart or from the character? Am I choosing from the soul or from the ego that learned to speak nicely? Only when you answer yourself with honesty does the game clean itself, because you can't deceive the field that sees everything. And now that we've cleaned the path of interferences, in the next chapter you'll discover that the game does respond all the time. It just speaks in codes, symbols, and signs. Get ready, because one of the most important stages is coming. Synchronicity. Chapter 6. Synchronicity. How the game talks to you all the time. Nothing in your life appears by mistake. Everything is coded in the language of the soul. But that language isn't linear. It's not read with the eyes. It's felt. Signals that repeat, numbers, words, intuitions, songs, symbols. All of that is part of a silent conversation between you and the universe. A conversation that never stops, even though you're not listening to it. Signals aren't coincidence, they're resonance. What you see outside isn't a prediction, it's a mirror of what you're emitting now. Deepak Chopra describes it as vibrational causality. The reality you experience is the effect of an internal cause that you didn't even know you were activating. Synchronicities, those encounters, phrases, or events that seem magically aligned, aren't magic, they're clues, they're confirmations, they're calls. But here's where many get it wrong. They search for answers in everything, from anxiety. They want to control the signal, manipulate the message, force guidance, and in that attempt, they distort it. Synchronicity doesn't shout, it whispers, it doesn't tell you what to do. It reminds you who you're being. The more aligned you are, the clearer the board becomes. But if you run after the symbols, you lose sight of them. A very common example, someone who ends a painful relationship and starts seeing their ex-partner's name everywhere. Is it a sign to return, or is it a reflection that there's an energetic tie that hasn't yet been released? Synchronicity doesn't force you, it informs you. You're the one who must decipher the code without projecting your desires or your fears onto it. Learning to read these signals doesn't require a supernatural gift, it requires internal silence. The more space you create between your reaction and your observation, the more clearly you'll hear. It's like tuning a radio station. If your frequency is distorted by mental noise, you'll only perceive interference. But when you turn down the volume of the ego, everything fits as if the universe were orchestrating every detail for you, because in fact it is. A simple but profound practice. For 1 week, every time something strange, repetitive, or coincidental happens, don't judge it. Just write it down. A number, a phrase, an unexpected person. At the end of the day, review everything you've recorded. Ask yourself, what emotional state was I in when this appeared? What was I thinking or feeling? That's the key. Signals don't predict, they reflect your current state. Over time, you'll see that the spiritual game talks to you all the time, not to give you instructions, but to show you where you're headed. And when you learn to walk in synchronicity, you no longer doubt, you recognize, you perceive, you follow the flow without effort, and the universe responds with surgical precision. And in the next chapter, you'll discover the most important thing. It's not just about reading the game, but about learning to play it from your center, because the true power of the player isn't in what they desire, but in what they emit, and that power you carry within. Chapter 7. The Power of the Player. How to create reality from being. In this spiritual game, the winner isn't the one who desires most, but the one who aligns most. It's not about external effort, it's about internal frequency. Most people play from lack. They desire to manifest a partner, more money, more freedom, but they do it from need, not from creation. And the universe doesn't respond to desire, it responds to the vibrational emission of being. This is where everything changes, when you stop projecting goals and begin to embody states. Greg Braden, researcher and reference author in spiritual physics and neurocardiology, explains that coherent emotion, that is, when what you think, feel, and do is aligned, generates an electromagnetic field that reorganizes matter. It's not fantasy, it's quantum biology. Your field is the signal. And that signal attracts what coincides. That's why we don't manifest what we want. We manifest what we are. You can repeat affirmations all day, but if your actions contradict your words, if your emotions deny your thoughts, then the universe receives a confused signal, and a confused signal creates nothing. The conscious player isn't defined by what they achieve, but by the state from which they play. When being is in coherence, movements flow. They don't force the pieces. They don't doubt the board. They become one with the game, and from there, creation stops being struggle and becomes dance. A clear example: two people launch the same project. One does it from anxiety, expecting validation, comparing themselves with others. The other does it from an internal calling, without attachment, with clarity. Same effort, different frequency. Result: one gets exhausted, the other grows. It wasn't the project, it was the player. A powerful practice. When starting your day, before doing any task, ask yourself, from where am I going to play today? Not what am I going to do, but from what state am I going to do it? From haste or from clarity, from fear or from expansion? That question is your compass, because if you correct your being, your results correct themselves. In the next chapter, you'll discover something even deeper. This game isn't won, it's remembered. The goal isn't to achieve more. It's to return to being who you already were before forgetting. Because when you release the demand and return to playing from the soul, what seemed impossible becomes inevitable. Chapter 8. The Game. It's not won, it's remembered. Returning to play from the soul. Everyone is busy wanting to win, but almost no one asks themselves who they were before learning to compete. The spiritual game isn't won by accumulating achievements, it's won by returning to play from essence. And that only happens when you release the weight, the guilt, the demand, when you stop running to float again. As children, we didn't need reasons to create or justifications to laugh. We didn't ask ourselves if we were enough. We simply were. We played just because. We imagined without limits. That was the soul's memory. Before the system trained us to survive, Osho called it the divine game of existence, a sacred dance where the soul doesn't stress about the result, because it already knows it's part of the whole, where one doesn't act for external approval, but for internal joy. But to return to that state, one must deprogram, stop measuring ourselves by goals, and begin to meditate with movement. That doesn't mean abandoning reality, it means playing it from another frequency, doing business from purpose, loving without possessing, creating without pressure, living from totality, not from need. The soul remembers its mission when the character stops pretending. A subtle and powerful practice. At the end of the day, instead of asking yourself, what did I achieve today? Ask yourself, from where did I play today? Was I present or just reacting? Did I listen to the soul or keep running from fear? Every night you can recalibrate, and every morning you can choose to play differently. The universe doesn't want you to win. It wants you to remember that you are it. This game wasn't designed to exhaust you. It was designed to awaken you. The universe doesn't want you to prove anything. It wants you to remember who you are. You're a spark of the whole playing at forgetting in order to find yourself again. You've gone through stages, missions, traps, and revelations, and everything led you to one point. The understanding that you're not here to accumulate. You're here to embody, to live with intention, to move with consciousness, to love without conditions. There are no written rules because the true rule is to vibrate from the authentic. There are no judges outside, only mirrors. And there are no trophies worth more than the peace of having remembered yourself. I invite you to continue exploring the other audiobooks on the channel, not as separate pieces, but as complementary maps. Each one reveals a part of the game. Each one activates a key in your memory, because in the end, this isn't a series of teachings, it's a mission of return. And if you made it this far, you've already started to remember it. If this resonated with you and you want to continue this journey of remembering, subscribe to the channel. Every video is a new piece of the puzzle, a new tool to help you play this spiritual game with more consciousness and power. Don't miss the next chapters of your awakening. Hit that subscribe button and activate notifications so you can continue expanding your understanding of who you truly are. The game continues, and your soul is ready for what comes next.